Hi, everybody. Today, I would like to introduce you to the CISE platform. I'm doing this presentation in English, so that makes it easier to share the presentation later on with colleagues, for example. Please keep a pen and notebook or write down on your computer if you have any questions or ideas popping up during this presentation, and so you can write them down. In this presentation, I would like to introduce you to the why and to the what of CISE. So, why do we need CISE and what is CISE? I will end the presentation with the broader research questions of this community of practice and tell you how you can start engaging in the discussion already and leave some input on these questions. So, why CISE? To start answering this question, I will take you on a journey about the circular economy and how we think about the future of a circular economy. How will this look like? And what is needed to reach the circular future? As all the co-partners come from different fields and have different experience levels regarding the circular economy and its challenges, I will start at the beginning. In the linear economy, we extract raw materials from the earth, we turn them into half fabricates, we assemble them into products, and we sell these products to user, and we add value in every step. After a short lifetime, however, these products are thrown away and end up in landfill, thus destroying value. The business behind this linear economy is selling as many products as possible that are nearly broken, so that you can continue selling them as many products as possible. This linear production chain is actually quite weird because it assumes that raw materials remain available indefinitely. And we all know now they are not. In fact, they are running out. So, therefore, we need another mindset, economic mindset. And that's where the circular economy comes into play. A key distinction of the circular economy is the need to consider the entire life cycle of the resource. Resources must remain functioning at their highest potential for as long as possible, and they must be re-entered into the system to create value again and again, from pre-use to post-use and back. In other words, let products circulate as long as possible, as high as possible, around the top of the value hill that you can see. This is not just about preventing waste by recycling, as some think, which is turning products back into raw materials, but it's preferably maintaining as much added value as possible by either directly reusing products or reusing components or parts of the product, which is called refurbishing. In other words, you want to minimize the energy and resources needed to keep the added value of the product as high as possible. As you can see in the figure, the value hill, the loop of reuse is much shorter as you slowly cascade down towards to the last and least efficient loop, which is recycling, going back to raw materials and adding value again. And directly reusing is a much shorter cycle. Examples of business strategy that close the loop are, for example, second-hand sellers, refurbishers, recaptured material suppliers, or recyclers. But business activities are not only happening on the right side of the value hill, where the resource loop is closed, but also on the left, where value is initially created, by designing materials and products that have a long life and are easy to disassemble or reuse. So contributing to narrowing the loop, in other words, fewer materials that run through the cycle. Circular business activities can also take place during the use phase of a product, for example, repair and maintenance service, or providing the product as a service, or providing add-ons that prolong the life of a product. And they all contribute to the slowing of the loop. That means having materials cycle slower through the loop. And lastly, most of these business activities are currently executed by different actors along the value or supply chain. However, a circular supply chain requires the coordination of material, information, and money flows going through all these actors. For example, innovation on the left side could add tremendous value to an actor on the right side of the value hill, but this innovation investment will never take place on the left side if the upsides are not distributed back to the one actually investing in it. In other words, a circular economy requires collaboration and thus the sharing of risks, but also the sharing of benefits, and of course, sharing of information across an increasingly complex network of actors. Therefore, the last category of business activities we call network organization. And these activities are, for example, developing remote monitoring technologies or data sharing platforms, but also enabling strategies such as finance, data, or legal enabling supporting activities. So in the linear economy, the revenue model is selling as many nearly broken products as possible. An important business model for the future, however, is the shift from ownership to use. In such a business model, we will start buying clean laundry rather than a washing machine. As a customer, so I would pay a use fee for using the asset, the washing machine, or the outcome of the asset, which is clean laundry. And I do not want anything to do with replacing parts. I just want the machine to work. The materials or parts that when the machine is broken are not of my concern. Ideally, also the energy and water bill are not of my concern. Such a business model provides a financial incentive to fundamentally rethink the product, making sure the machine lasts as long as possible with as little maintenance or involvement as possible, and as energy efficient as possible. So clean laundry providers must therefore fundamentally rethink their product, and responsibility shifts from the end user, the customer, to the provider. The more sustainable the product is, the more he earns. Take, for example, Bundles and Homey. They offer such a service around a washing machine. Homey offers a pure form of pay-per-use and charges a fee per wash, pay per wash. Depending on the energy consumption of a certain washing program, prices are adjusted. Bundles combines a fixed monthly fee with a fee per washing cycle. In both cases, the service provider is responsible for installation, maintenance, and repair of the machine, but also replacement if the machine becomes outdated or broken. A device is attached to the washing machines which monitors its usage. Statistics gathered from the machine are translated into tips and insights that are communicated to the user and reduce the overall cost of doing laundry, including energy, water, and detergent consumption. It also gives feedback on the effect of different sorting, dosing, and programming schemes. This way, not only the costs for the customer are reduced, but also the life of the machine is prolonged. A win-win situation. However, currently, Bundles and Homey purchase all services, consumables, washing detergent or coffee beans, and especially all assets, the hardware, the washing machine, all up front. And they bundle them into a service proposition for their customers. So you could call them service aggregators. A much heard critique of their business models, however, is that they have limited influence on the design of the washing machine. Their current goal is, however, to seduce those asset manufacturers and consumable providers to start developing products that better fit this new story of circularity. At the same time, they develop intelligence by placing these devices on the machines, intelligence on washing behavior and maintenance requirements, as well as involving the user into sustainable practices. However, as you can see here, they finance upfront the whole supply chain actually, which can be quite a challenge. Of course, this can be partially solved by negotiating a good price or another sort of agreement with the manufacturer, but it appears to be a problem for almost all service providers we have spoken to so far. We have found that similar challenges actually arise also for manufacturers. Even though manufacturers generally have a well-established and therefore can rely on capital buffers, a well-established business, and they have well-established buffers from other business units generating cash flow, it is difficult to attract finance specifically for the upfront financing of the assets that are being serviced. Moreover, if the service unit tends to grow to a significant portion of business, the upfront financing issue remains, as operating a use model leads to revenues that are being incremental and only available over an extended period. So to make a shift from the manufacturer being the service aggregator is a very nice step, but still they are oftentimes only assemblers. Also, manufacturers are generally not equipped to provide services as all their processes and efforts are geared towards selling products. And lastly, although a manufacturer might choose to provide all the services in-house, so not collaborate with others, they will need to attract new activities to their value chain, such as monitoring and data intelligence services. In other words, to optimize lifecycle performance, the service aggregator, whether manufacturer or not, heavily depends on its value chain. So better life cycle guarantees can be negotiated with value chain partners, maybe even buyback agreements with them. But the best way to align incentives towards circularity is to integrate all these chain partners into this business model. So to conclude, I think it is impossible to reach a circular state alone. So a full service proposition involves hardware, consumables, and services. This means that other supply and value chain partners should also take responsibility for their part in functioning of the asset. In the example of the washing machine, this would entail, for example, the manufacturers of the motor, the water pump, and drum, for example, to be involved as well, so to take responsible for their part, as well as the washing detergent providers. These chain partners could be compensated based on performance as well. In other words, for example, the drum as a service or the motor as a service or even steel as a service, all the components that make up this washing machine. This would lead to reduction of sales models in the value chain and would spread the upfront investments that are required from bundles to Miele to the whole supply chain of partners that are involved. So lifecycle performance would become a shared responsibility of all participants in this network. In such a system, an innovation at one point in the network benefits actually all participants directly. This creates leverage to share risks and benefits. However, this can only work if there is trust and openness in this network. Okay, back to reality. What is the current situation? Why aren't we there yet? As we see now in the market happening with all initiators of such kind of service propositions, there is a lack of scale. And this lack of scale is due to three main challenges, which we have identified in the last couple of years. The first is lack of access to capital. Lack of access to purchase all these assets in sufficient quantities to scale up the business. And this is aggravated by operating this use model, which leads to tied up capital, which we already mentioned before. Revenues are coming in incremental per use fee and are therefore only available over an extended period. But also the financing costs are quite high due to the specific financing needs that are at the moment not yet mainstream, you could say. In addition to that, this funding need is based on many small sums because the funding need is based on the growth of your customer base. With a new customer, a new washing machine needs to be purchased. And this leads to a high administration cost for the financier also, if you need to only for every new funding need, you have to make another contract between financier and entrepreneur, for example. In the current finance practice, it is preferred to lend or invest a big sum at once rather than small tickets. Therefore, it requires new financial products and a sort of combination of lease with project finance and with the focus on cash flows rather than the assets. Currently, however, financiers or finance providers lack good insight in the risks and returns involved in this and are therefore very reluctant to finance these types of businesses. We will turn to these financing issues later. But secondly, we see that the complexity of managing these kinds of networks become increasingly complex. But also the planning and the ownership of these types of businesses, because excuse me, the more actors that are involved in offering services around an asset changes the ownership and responsibilities around them. This means at the moment that the service provider retains the ownership of the asset with an ever-growing balance sheet as a result. However, the more service providers would become involved in collectively providing this service, the more complex this division of ownership becomes, and responsibilities with it. So legal challenges arise about liabilities, who is responsible for what, especially when things go wrong. In a circular service model, also the relationship with clients are intended to be long-term, and are shaped through contracts and agreements. This leads to increased cost for managing receivables, for example, for the entrepreneur doing the invoicing, doing credit checks on its customers, executing and enforcing its contracts, and tracking also the performance of the assets. And as the network grows, this complexity of administration grows too. So this all requires a higher level of coordination between all kinds of stakeholders, not only between service providers, but also between finance providers, regulators, and other supporting mechanisms. So to take the example of bundles again, he is managing its receivables and contracts on its own. He coordinates all services, and he also needs to administer various legal entities necessary to execute its business. It's rather a complex administration burden. And many entrepreneurs that have similar business models, and we have spoken to several of them lately, experience similar challenges. But rather than involving more partners and increasing opportunities by engaging with other actors to increase their cross-selling opportunities, they opt out of these opportunities because it's too complex to manage. And lastly, due to all these increased complexity, it leads to high cost for managing this. High transaction cost, we call that. That's like the sum of administration costs, legal costs for contract management, but also the high financing costs and logistics that come with that. And all this, all these higher costs that lower the competitive power of these circular businesses. And that's where size comes in. Why size? What can size do, enable, that is currently not possible yet in the market? An important driver of this was scale, to enable scale, because we see that these service businesses remain small and have not the opportunity to grow large. So we think that automating enforcement of contracts and by tapping into standard, scalable financial, legal, and governance structures could enable this increasing volume. Secondly, the platform facilitates collaboration and enables managing this increasing complexity by automating the exchange of transactions and information between service providers themselves, but also between any actor in this value chain. And through a shared and solid governance structure, collaboration could take place on a very large scale. It could also provide the financiability or improve, sorry, it could improve the financiability of circular models hugely, as it provides an intermediary mechanism to bundle finance, assets, and actors into one platform, which might make the normally unfinanceable as a sole finance provider now suddenly financeable. For example, a portfolio of X million assets, think of combining washing machine, coffee makers, electric cars, scooters, headphones, smartphones, everything you can think of. A portfolio of an X million of these circular assets is impossible to create as an entrepreneur alone, even with two, maybe even value chain, but it could become possible through a network of supply chains. Similarly, the administration, so the data to assess risks and behavior and the performance of these assets, are inherently woven into the technology. And what's more, the upfront investments that we have spoken about a bit before can be spread out over the whole supply chain, including enablers such as finance providers. We'll come back to that in a minute. And also, transaction costs can be lowered a lot by automating administration, contract management, and financing costs can also be lowered, which overall improve the competitiveness of prices for serviced assets. The platform also has the goal of guaranteeing circularity. So only circular entrepreneurs are allowed to enter the platform. And that means entrepreneurs that somehow engage in slowing, narrowing, or closing the resource loop. This means that circularity is guaranteed. Um, on the other hand, it is also meant to be as open as possible. So if there are 10 entrepreneurs servicing washing machine, they all can engage in the platform and use all the standard constructions that are there. In the end, improving the competitiveness of the circular market. So if a repair, if a cheaper or more circular repair service enters the market, this pushes other entrepreneurs to stay ahead of their game as well. And finally, what became apparent in conversations with CISE partners in previous communities of practice that we organized, it was found that the independence and reliability of the platform was found very important. And the validation that this system gets from the established parties that surrounding it, such as financial institutions and law and accountancy firms, makes that the solid design of this governance structure could be a very important asset of the platform, you could say. For example, this independent design is also there to prevent a single power to take over. Think of a Google that runs off with your data. So data needs to be protected and will only be shared for purposes on which consent is given. So privacy and shared governance is a very important principle of the design of the platform. Also, the way the infrastructure is set up is to engage with all stakeholders. So a saying is no shareholders, but stakeholders. So if you participate in the platform, you participate in a commons, in a commonly shared infrastructure, and actually have a say in the control and governance of it. And lastly, the earning model of the platform is envisioned not to be based on an extractive model that takes, for example, a fee for every transaction. Think of an Uber model or Airbnb, for example, but it will be based on additional services around the platform to set up the business and to engage with the platform. So all this, you could call them foundational principles of the platform, how it's envisioned. Also, this we will cover later in more detail. And so, how does the platform work actually? To take bundles again as an example and take the perspective of the user, it works as follows. So in an online shop, all circular subscriptions are displayed, of which one is bundles. And the user first goes through a verification process, which, if it's successful, attaches a digital wallet to the user account, with which you can buy units of service. So the user chooses bundles, for example, and assigns a corresponding use contract. And in the use contract, there are prices and terms about the use of the washing machine and the attached price and stuff. And the token contract that states the terms on which the wallet can be charged. And these both are signed. The balance in the wallet represents euros. They are called micro euros, as it is possible to be charged a sum smaller than 1 euro cent, for example, to pay for a minute of lighting or the water of a washing cycle. So, bundle subscription is chosen, bundle supplies the washing machine and everything needed for clean laundry. Then the washing machine can be accessed in a shared location or at home, for example. The account of the customer needs to be connected to the asset, and this can happen through scanning a barcode in a shared location, for example. When at home, that only needs to happen once. And then the user can start consuming units of service, doing laundry, and the user's wallet will be charged automatically after having done its laundry. This enables actually direct feedback about sustainability of consumption. That's where you see when you choose the program, you can be nudged into a sustainable program by pricing accordingly, or to nudge towards specific behavior, such as washing during off-peak hours or doing small maintenance tasks, and introduce discounts for doing that. Well, anyway, after the washing machine is used, your wallet is automatically charged. So after the wallet is being charged, the payment is automatically distributed via smart contracts to all companies involved in the service. So service providers such as bundles, but also the hardware providers such as the manufacturer, but also consumable providers, so the washing detergent provider or coffee beans or water or energy, but also the finance provider for a specific asset can also be included in these payment distributions and thus would be paid directly from the generated use fee, which is made possible by his investment. And the role of finance provider can actually be taken up by anyone on the platform. Suppose, for example, that Miele, the manufacturer of the washing machines that Bundles uses in his business, suppose that Miele doesn't want to provide its washing machine in a use model and doesn't want to provide all sorts of services along the way, but sold his device to the platform or to Bundles under the ongoing obligation that he will take back the devices and reuse raw materials. So this would be a sales under this obligation to take it back at the end of life. And instead of looking for other finance providers to actually finance this asset, the washing machine, Miele could also say, just provide me with a use fee or a monthly fee for the provision of the device. Then Miele actually chooses to be a finance provider of his own product, coincidentally. And he becomes a service provider on the platform and one of the people that are paid out from the use fee. The same holds for any service provider or even an end user could also. With an account, you could use your euros in your wallet to provide finance for an asset, maybe your own assets or someone else's. So, if you think about it, there could be so many flavors to being a stakeholder and participant in the platform. In this way, also, new financial products could be developed that are specifically designed to align with circular dynamics. But we're talking a lot about washing machines. Of course, this model can be done with any other assets and has been already tested with coffee makers and cars and milking robots. A demo with coffee machines we did last year will be, I will show that in a minute. The tokens that are charged from your wallet, so they represent a euro, and these tokens in your wallet can be exchanged back to euros at any time, or as provided the example before, or you can use these euros in your wallet to actually finance assets, or of course doing washes. The ledger, which is underlying the platform where all receivables and other information is recorded, means that all the cash flows that are generated around a specific asset can be ring fenced. That means separating and limited to a specific asset. Service providers and financiers and other actors, which you have seen, that create value around this asset are connected to the asset through smart contracts that execute payments to corresponding wallets. So this could mean this enables the diversification of investments on asset level. So, for example, having a portfolio of different asset types and risk profiles attached. It would align the incentives for sustainability not only between service providers, but also extend it to finance providers. And well, questions regarding who cashes its tokens first, how will this work, how will a contract look like which underlies this, how do investment needs need to be communicated, what information does a finance provider need to make a decision. These are questions that we will explore in this community of practice and in a later session. So I would actually like to finish this presentation with a demo with coffee machine that we actually presented last year as a final presentation of the community of practice we did last year. The demo is made by the Rabobank team. They are the founding fathers and actually the developers of the prototype of this circular service platform. Featured in this demo are Kees, which is a lawyer at Allen & Overy and also part of this community. He will consume a cappuccino. Bundles will provide the coffee service. Mayi is the consumable supplier which provides the coffee beans. And Egbert is the finance provider in the example. After the demo, I will provide you with some final questions to reflect on and answer. There we go. So the questions we would like to ask during this community practice the coming months are about how the platform should be set up to have different financiers enabled to invest in circular assets via the platform. So the questions are around the financial product. So how to position this new instrument, how would that work? What contracts would underlie this new product? And how feasible is this? Also, how relevant are these instruments for different finance providers? So how can different finance providers reinforce each other? What risks are there and how could they be mitigated or identified uh, via the platform, but also how can regulators and accountants be involved? How can the platform be considered compliant? And well, we have thought of some governance structures, but would this, what conditions should these meet? How should the entity look like, etc. So these are the broader research questions we would like to answer in this community of practice. But for now, I would like you to answer 3 questions, broader questions to you. It's like, what opportunities do you see in CISE, having heard about it and given your background and the goals of your organization? Similarly, what risks do you see now already? But also the question, so given the broader research questions, what information do I still need to be able to say something about financing via this platform? I made a survey monkey. I will send it around. You see here also the link to it. There you can answer these questions. It would be awesome if you could provide them already before our live session, because then it can be served as an input, as a discussion starter. If you have any other questions or comments or suggestions, you can either comment them below this video or via the Zoom channel. However, I've heard that not everyone is allowed or wants to use Zoom due to the privacy issues they have. But you can also always email them to me. So leaves me to say thanks. Thanks for your attention. It's for all a bit new, also for me to present in my own house here in the camera. It feels a bit weird. However, in the next session, we will dive deeper into the financial issues and the governance. So we will prepare a presentation about these as well. I will see you all live coming Wednesday at 10:30. Practical details on what link to use to the conference call will be shared in the beginning of next week. As I was planning on using Zoom, I need to figure out a way to do the live session. I will update you on this soon. Please stay tuned. Thank you. Bye bye.